You're listening to the Connected Parenting Minute with Will and CarrieAnn Standfest. This podcast is a conversation about parenting, using connection first, trauma-informed principles. Because when you lead with connection, everyone feels seen, which is the foundation to a more peaceful home. This podcast reminds you that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but we can all get a little better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Will Standfest, and I am so excited that you are here for Season 2 of the Connected Parenting Minute.
Woot woot!
Joining me, as always, is the fabulous, the lovely, the one and only CarrieAnn Standfest.
That's me.
So, thank you to everybody who listened to the first season of our podcast.
Yep.
It was fun. It was exciting. We have 10 episodes out there that we're very proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after a short summer break, we are recording again for Season 2.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I thought we would spend a little bit more time recording since we ended Season 1, but summer's gone by fast.
It's been a busy summer. We went to family camp with some other adoptive and foster families and some wonderful friends of ours, and it was fantastic.
So good. I can't tell you how good it felt to be in the presence of people who kind of get it.
Oh, yeah.
It's one thing to parent and to have, a bunch of kids too, but just being able to be around other families that knew kind of the feel of the foster care world and adoption.
The struggles you face, what goes on with kids, like the balancing act between care and trauma and birth families and other things.
There's just a lot of pieces that come into play. And when you're around other people that get that, it's just really, it's fun, but it's also just, you feel seen, right? This is about a relationship. You feel seen in that relationship. And
the big bonus is we were not the largest family there.
Woo!
Oh, yeah, that's right. Daryl, we love you.
There's one family that had 9 kids.
9 children. We have 8. So it is unusual for us not to be the largest family by far, if we're honest.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was a really good time, and it was really refreshing, a good time off and time to connect and, learn more about trauma and about connected parenting. And we're fired up and excited to kind of jump back into the next season here.
Yeah.
So let's get to it, shall we?
Awesome.
All right. Tonight's episode, we are talking about what I know is the favorite topic of so many parents of littles.
Yeah.
Tantrums and meltdowns.
Do.
Right? As a parent who has had a couple of small children,
a few,
6, you see a lot of tantrums and meltdowns. For example, like the story that comes to my mind, this is actually fairly recent, probably within the last couple months here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a 7-year-old who is now going into 2nd grade. She is way bigger. I almost said 1st grade. She would be upset with me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So she's going into 2nd grade. She is super old. And she was asked to clean her room on Saturdays. That's kind of the thing Saturdays in our house. You got to take a shower. You got to clean your room and clean up the kitchen. And then you can play video games.
Mm-hmm.
She was asked to go clean her room, which was, I don't know. What would you categorize it on the
I would
scale?
say it's definitely a category 6 hurricane.
It was a mess. There were clothes everywhere, dress up clothes, toys, play food, blankets, stuffies, everything.
I'm
wall to
sure
wall.
most of parents listening can relate to some degree.
If you can picture a child's room where you can walk in and you can't actually see the carpet because there's so much stuff on the floor, that might have been close.
Yes.
And so she was told to go clean her room because it was after breakfast and it was time to start doing these things. And she disappeared for a while and you didn't hear anything. And we went to, I don't know if it was me or if it was you. We'll say it was me.
Sure.
I went to go check on them and check on her. I walked in. It looked like maybe 2 things had been moved to the floor. Still couldn't actually see the carpet. And I asked this child, I said, what's going on? You were asked to clean your room and you've been in here for 15 minutes. And there was a big sigh of, and waterworks and sobbing and just the drama of just this total meltdown tantrum thing and whatever. And she just lost it, which was unpleasant for me.
which was unpleasant. And unfortunately, right, like in her growth stage, it's par for the course. I mean, like she really does have a lot of big reactions to a lot of things.
She does
right now. And we're kind of like, okay, we're connected parents. And sometimes it doesn't come out the first thing, but that's why we talk about it because, help keep us accountable and keep talking about things. And eventually maybe it'll stick by our last child.
Yeah. And what she said in that moment, this is like one of these few moments of like pure clarity that like kind of like grabs you. This is why I'm using the specific example. I asked her why she hadn't started and her response was, Daddy, there's just so much. I don't know where to start. Let me tell you, if that doesn't just like grab you for a moment, this child crying, not because she's being naughty and angry at me or trying to avoid working. She's overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, there's so much stuff. I don't even know where to start. And she was like, she cried more from saying that. Like you could tell like I could tell this was not a show she was putting on. She was genuinely upset and overwhelmed by how messy the room was. And she just didn't know how to start.
Right.
And that comes to our first point on tantrums and meltdowns. There's a big difference between willful disobedience, this rebellious, I'm trying to do something bad attitude, and just a reaction, like a fear-based, like survival brain reaction of her brain in that moment was in its survival mode. It was not in the prefrontal cortex of planning out how she was going to be evil and how she's going to avoid doing any work and whatever. She was overwhelmed and her survival brain just said, and freaked out.
Yeah.
That moment really showed me that there's more going on in these tantrums than just my child's being naughty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the first step too, as we understand how to work through our tantrums and meltdowns with our kids and how to help them in those moments, how to help ourselves in those moments, is we need to look at it and realize it's not always my child is choosing to be naughty right now and actively trying to be deceitful or not do what they've been asked, but that there is a lot of times where genuinely this is a child who doesn't know how to handle the situation. And so they're reacting poorly because they're a child and they don't have the experience of how to react in these stressful situations.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because we as parents have a big role that we play in that, in the aspect that we take something like that and we instantly see the worst possible reasoning behind it.
Sure.
When we talk about the fact that our 7-year-old was just seemingly trying to avoid doing a bunch of work and, crying about it, if we go, well, obviously they're just being naughty and they just don't want to do the thing. And so, and never looking beyond that, we miss that opportunity to connect with our child in that way. When we just look and see the worst case scenario, so to speak, we miss that opportunity. But regardless of what their motivation is in that moment, one of the things that sticks out to me is that our reaction should kind of be the same.
Ooh, really now?
Yeah.
That's hard though, right?
It is hard because when you're interacting with people, you think about it, sometimes what you perceive their motivation dictates how you react to them, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You have a coworker and they're acting like a jerk, but you feel like, well, they're going through this really rough time. They just got a divorce or something awful happened in their family. You have a lot more compassion for them, right? But if you don't know any of those details and you're just like, man, they just remind me of that kid who was being a jerk to me when I was, in high school or whatever, that's going to reflect how you react to them.
Well, and there's a good point right there too, is how our history can cause us to interpret these things.
Right.
Right. The things we've experienced or how we were raised or stressful situations we've been in the past can change how we react to that same situation in the future.
Yeah. I think that really wraps up our first point, is that you've got to know that there's a difference between willful disobedience and a reaction, whether that's fear-based reaction, whatever's going on in their brains that may just be what comes out in that moment, and that we need to react the same either way.
All right. And before we jump into point number 2, we're going to have a quick word from the sponsor of today's episode.
Hey, Will, you know what makes me an even better parent than just listening to our podcast?
What's that, CarrieAnn?
Coffee.
Oh, absolutely. You are so right.
And our listeners are in luck because we are doing a review giveaway. We're giving away coffee to you, the loyal listener. All you have to do to enter is leave a review of our podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. Take a screenshot of that review and send it to us at connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.
On December 15th, we'll pick 5 lucky winners to receive a Starbucks gift card worth coffee and maybe a little snack.
Enter today. And now back to the program. So point number 2, darling, you were starting to say?
I mean, I feel like it comes back to this so many times, but I think that that's something we undervalue, maybe even.
Sure.
But that art of underreacting in the moment is a really, really powerful tool that we have as parents. Because when we're acting out of, when we're reacting to our kids' behavior out of just whatever feels good in the moment or whatever we are used to growing up, we lose that opportunity to be that safe place for our kids. And we also lose the opportunity to be able to be that calming, that regulating force in their life and be able to speak into that when we kind of get past when kids get regulated and when we're able to say, hey, so, this just happened. Can you tell me more about that? What do you think we could have done differently? Why don't we try a redo? There's
But if you came in yelling and screaming when that happened, you kind of lose the authority to speak into that almost.
A little bit. I mean, you're
still the adult and we can contradict ourselves all we want.
Right. But we have this opportunity when we maintain that calm or when we show them how to handle dysregulation in a good, positive way. Maybe that means stepping out of the moment for ourselves, doing the things we know that we need to meet our own needs to be able to regulate with our kids or co-regulate with our kids. Then we're consistently showing them examples of how to slowly be able for themselves to self-regulate.
Yeah. Well, and the other message you're sending when you react big, when they react big is, well, two messages really. One, this is how you react when somebody freaks out in front of you, which, is just training them for their future. Or number 2, the more subtle, more like insidious or hurtful messages is I can't handle your big emotion.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're saying I can't handle this. You're too much. Like all these like potentially really hurtful, like little messages that you aren't actively saying. None of us mean to say that to our kid when they're having a hard time, but that is the undercurrent if we're being honest, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely is. And, don't take this all as doom and gloom either, because, you can definitely, again, as we know better, we do better. We continue to grow in our parenting, and we can always use that as an example of, hey, you know what? Mom really lost her stuff right there. Can I have a redo? I'd like to redo this situation because I did not handle that well. And
that's huge. That's a huge gift to give your children, to model that humility and willingness to apologize when you're wrong. The fact that you're doing your own self-reflection and you're like, I don't like how that went and I want to do it better. That's all really, really good stuff for your kids to see.
Right. The other thing I want to make a note of is this isn't a magic bullet. If you underreact to your kids, especially as we're talking like more teens rather than that, like 7-year-old, little kids, you might get 1 or 2 reactions. You might get a reaction of your kids, it co-regulating them, they come down, they come calm. It could go the opposite way. It depends on your relationship with your kid. It could just take them off. So just be prepared for that, especially if you're going to try this like with older kids or really, really slick younger kids.
But that doesn't mean it's the wrong reaction.
No.
It just means you need to be prepared, because if you're reacting different, especially differently than you used to, now it's unpredictable. Now your kids' emotions, their survival brain is kicking in again of like, what's going on? I don't know what's happening right now.
Right. And just remember, you know your child best.
Yes.
Continue to learn who your child is, especially as they're learning and growing. Okay, that was the caveat for that. So point number 2 is underreact. Remember that you're the adult and that, we get to set the tone for these tantrums and meltdowns. I mean, I think of times when my kids have melted down, like little kids in the store, and like my reaction was not good.
Oh no.
Because all I wanted them to do is be quiet and not cause a scene and not have all these parents looking at me and thinking what a bad parent I am. And so,
I mean, that's real. That's what we've all been there.
yes.
All right. And so that brings us to point number 3, that in the end, your child is expressing a need, even though they are doing it in an inappropriate way that is stressing you out and is overwhelming, and you're just done with it and you're tired and you're sick of it for today. Your child is trying to tell you that there's a need.
Yeah.
Now, the basic needs when they're like this is the HALT acronym, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Like these are the 4 categories you can kind of start with when your kid is melting down or having a hard time. But again, as you just said, you need to be the world's best detective for your child. And so being able to say, my kid hasn't had a snack in 4 hours, or their water bottle is in the kitchen and it's been sitting there for a couple of hours. They're dehydrated. They're hungry. It's an hour past dinner because I was on my phone, whatever the situation might be. Like that's a good place to start.
Right. Well, and if we think back to when kids were little babies,
yes,
the only way they had to express a need is to cry. And so you had to be the detective and figure out what is it they need. Are they hungry? Or did they have a dirty diaper? Are they tired? Do they just need to be held? It's really simple it's not really simple, but theoretically
raising the infant is not really simple.
No.
But the gamut of an infant's needs is fairly simple.
There you go. And that's a better way to put it. Cause I'm like, I've been there so many times saying simple just does not fit.
It's not working. I can't say it.
No, that's a lie. No, but when your kids are really little like that, the gamut, like you said, of their needs are seemingly simple. And then as we get older, they start to fold more feelings and thoughts and experiences into those. And it does get to be harder to figure out, like, what is it that they need? And so, again, that connected piece of interacting with your child, knowing who your child is, paying attention to the things that are important to them or the things that have happened to them, as best your ability. I mean, when you talk foster and adoptive community, we know that there's so much that we don't know.
Yeah. So much you don't know about their history or their experiences.
But even when you have biological kids and you've known since they're, were conceived, there's still things you're not going to be able to understand about your kid. So I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that we have to continually accept the fact that our kids are going to be learning and growing in ways that we don't even understand. So we have to be open to that.
Yeah, because our kids are humans too. They have their own unique experiences and perspectives on the world that we don't always have or share or understand completely. And I think you gave a great example too of thinking of a coworker whose mom just died or just got a cancer diagnosis or whose kid is having a rough time or something like that. And you, in your only interaction with them is a meeting and they're acting like a jerk. You don't understand what's going on behind that thing. And so this is the encouragement that it's the same thing with our kids. Even for our littles that are, with us all day, every day. I didn't understand that our daughter was overwhelmed by how messy her room was. And she just needed a little help either getting started or getting some direction. And the same thing goes to our teens too, because there's a spectrum here.
Right.
Of going from the infant, like you were describing, who can only cry to express a whole gamut of needs, all the way up to hopefully an emotionally stable, contributing member of society, adult, with a fully formed prefrontal cortex who can express their needs in appropriate manners and meet some of their own needs. Our children are somewhere on that spectrum. And some adults we know are still somewhere on that spectrum.
Yes.
I mean, we all are. There's moments, there are needs that you and I have that we don't always express as appropriately or healthy as we could. So, and we're adults. So there's a little bit of, help your kid move along the spectrum, help them grow, develop the skills. That is what our job is as parents, because they're kids. They're still learning.
Yep. And what a privilege we get to help them along that journey.
It really is. It really is special.
I mean, it boggles my mind sometimes that we get to do that. So good job, parents.
All right. So to wrap up really quick here, let's go back over the 3 points that we covered tonight. The first one is you have to know that there's a difference between a willful act of disobedience and a reaction that your child is having.
And that your engagement with that, your reaction to that, it can be the same. It should be the same.
It should be the same, regardless of which end of the spectrum they're on.
Of their motivation.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
And what should that reaction be? Point number 2?
You should underreact. You should work on pushing your pause button for your reaction. I like to say that.
Nice.
I'm just going to pause my reaction right now and meet their needs, figure out what their needs are right now. If you can do that, if you can be in a healthy place to do that, figuring out what your kid needs in that moment can be a help. Maybe it's just give them a glass of water. Don't even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or for their littles, we've been like, I'm thirsty. You want to get a drink of water with me?
And you're saying that about yourself.
Right. Exactly.
Which is really healthy for them to see you expressing a need, identifying a need, and going to meet that need, and then inviting them into a relationship to go meet that need.
Right.
So many good things. That's a whole episode. Sorry.
That is. All right. And point number 3, we've got in the end, it's really tantrums and meltdowns are really your child expressing a need.
And so if we can be the calm one who can see past the tantrum and meltdown, identify and meet that need, we'll have diffused the situation in a hopefully healthy and constructive way. It helps our kids learn some skills.
And doing this consistently over time, I really do feel like that has consistently helped bring those tantrums and meltdowns down in frequency.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does.
And it doesn't hurt sometimes to keep a sucker in your purse because you know what? Sometimes you just need to bribe them.
That's okay.
I'll be honest.
Sucker, gum, chewing on things, sucking on things is very regulating.
See?
All right.
Totally worth it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this first episode of season 2. We are thrilled that you are with us. We appreciate every one of you listening. If you would take a moment and leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to, we would really appreciate it. It would help us out a lot.
Yes, it would.
We have a lot of exciting things coming up this season, and I can't wait to share them all with you. So make sure you come back for the next episode. And remember,
you don't have to be a perfect parent,
but we can all get a little bit better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Thanks for listening to my mom and dad's podcast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the like button like 10 billion times. Yeah!
For more parenting tips or to connect with us, check out the Connected Parenting Minute on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can send us an email using connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.